All right, let's go on to main topic. Let's jump on to main topic. Today we're going to talk about
Cybersleuths.
cybersleuths. Let me drop a quick intro for this thing. So, Pedro, as we said earlier, you should have dropped this trailer in our chat. I had never heard of this. I would probably never hear about this, but Cybersleuths is a docu-series. It focuses on the murder of four university kids from Idaho in 2022. They were stabbed in their dorm in Moscow, Idaho. So that case is actually still going on. They did make an arrest, but he hasn't been convicted yet. But the movie focuses
I
on.
believe he was convicted. It's just his trial hasn't.
Oh,
His
really?
trial isn't over yet. It's been delayed.
Okay. Okay. So, what is the docu series then? It's a docu series about these internet sleuths. I didn't know what this term was. I never heard of it, but it's basically people who are online who try to solve old murders, traditionally old murders. But in the case of this movie, there it's these TikTok folks who are actively engaged in the investigation and the breaking news and the day to day of this case as it happened in Idaho. And that's what the docu series kind of focuses on. Is not so much on the case itself, but the hysteria that these TikTokers create around it. I had never heard of the term cyber sleuth before, at least not to my memory. Is that something you guys were
I
familiar?
wasn't familiar with the term itself and to how deep some of these people are taking it. I am familiar with the fact that there's a huge like true crime community online, especially amongst young people, and it's become more popular in recent years as like Netflix and all these platforms have had a true crime like documentary series, especially cold cases and just stuff that's
Yep.
hard to explain, and just really weird murder cases. A lot of people in recent years have gotten into this stuff. True crime community has just grown online a lot. And of course, when that happens, there's going to be people that take it to the next level and start, getting hysterical about it and like trying to find clues and, posting on social media what they think, starting group chats, starting communities online about people other to get just to get other people involved who are interested in that's in a specific case, to just drop their opinion, drop clues. And then these people took it a step further and are just like going out to the crime scenes, acting as reporters, acting as media, and doing their own investigations, and just becoming sort of these social media celebrities that people follow and turn to for this alternative like news reporting, more about specific cases. And in this case with the Idaho murders, it was kind of like the perfect storm because it happened in a small town. I think they said there were only like 27 like cops or something in the town, or just the police force was like capped at 26, 27 people. There was such little information that was being revealed to the public. There was a lot of talk about how this department was incapable of handling this type of case. This case was too big for them. So with it was just a perfect storm with the lack of information coming out and all the questions the public had. People at some point were going to go and try to start solving this stuff themselves. There was a lot of anger at the police department for not being transparent, and a lot of complaints that they just weren't really working the case the way it was supposed to be worked.
Yeah. Okay, that was a lot, but yeah, a lot of that pretty much covers should give you the context you need to kind of follow along about regarding where this is kind of going. The first thing I want to jump on is the visual of the docu series. So
Great.
it relies
Excellent.
heavily on TikTok videos. Every lower third, and that's a lower third is that when a person is named on screen includes either their TikTok handle or Twitter handle, or there's that one guy who got a Facebook with like 200 friends. They list your followers or friends or subscribers next to your handle. And my man, who's like a retired detective, he was like I forgot his name. They put the Facebook thing on there. And they said he had 265 friends. I respect that. I respect.
Well, they
that.
also had like a native of Moscow, Idaho, some redneck looking guy in overalls.
Wait,
I don't
who?
know how they,
Not the
I don't
neighbor,
know how
was
they
it? Was
got
that the
him.
neighbor?
Nah. Just like some straight up caricature guy and then it said number of X followers 0. But he was some guy, like I swear, when he came on, I thought he was just like a comedic plant. I don't even know if this guy's real or not, but supposedly he's a native of the town.
It
Okay. Yeah, I thought the present. Go ahead,
it
Scott.
it,
Presentation.
it I thought it was well done. It was done. I don't know if it needed to be 3 episodes. It felt like it could have been a one full-length documentary. That there was you might have noticed there was a lot of footage from CBS News. For some odd reason, there was also footage from News Nation. I don't know why, but
A lot of news.
a lot of News Nation. I don't know why, but see, of course, it was CBS News because it was produced by Paramount Plus, so they encompassed their own material with guiding how it was being shown in the news and also behind the scenes footage of media camps in front of various places, including of the site of the murder that occurred. I thought it was interesting hearing Lydia Luciano's point of view because she covered the story for CBS News. So she was constantly bouncing back and forth of like she was actually agreeing with wanting there to be more access. She was on the side.
Hold on, you're getting a little bit ahead. I feel
them.
you, but you're jumping a little bit ahead.
But to go back as far as the quality, I thought there was a balance of showing what it needed to look like as far as showing it as you're watching on TikTok because you can't because everything is vertical.
Well, and that's how most of the people see the world today, right? That's how they see the news and everything is through that format. So instead of just making it like a full screen vertical video, they kind of created these phones and backdrops and everything. And I thought stylistically it was well done. Not anything that we haven't seen before, but to rely so heavily on that format for a 3-hour documentary and not make it stale, I thought was really impressive.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really impressive that you can, in this day and age, you can make a documentary and just have the narrative pushed forward through just social media content.
Yeah.
It's almost like you can make a documentary with 99% social media footage. And it just narrates itself, you just...
Well, yeah, that was kind of the point, too, was letting that footage speak for itself. Absolutely, yeah. And then you incorporated some of the talking heads via interviews. Many of the TikTokers, or pretty much all of them, did provide interviews for the piece. So I thought it was pretty cool. I thought the story was pretty cool. I had never heard of this murder, and it seems like it was a big deal, and somehow I missed it in 2022. Like, are you guys familiar with this story?
I'm familiar with it. I never looked into the details of it while it was breaking on the news, but I always knew that at some point they're gonna make a ton of like content on this murder because it was so unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I always in the back of my head I'm just like, yeah, I'll just wait till that stuff comes out to get the full story.
Yeah, so basically what happened in 2022, these just like decent college kids, a couple, and then 2 best friends, I guess, they were just randomly murdered one night in this little town of Moscow, Idaho. It's like I guess it's like a college town. And then there's like some surveillance footage of them at a food truck. That was probably the last time that they were seen alive. And at the house, while they were murdered, there were also additional roommates in the house who apparently heard or did not hear or called the cops or did not call the cops. So it created this whole thing about like, who killed these people. The documentary focuses on the impact that these sleuths on TikTok have on the case. One of the underlying themes that the TikTokers put out is like you can't, and this is, something that's very contemporary, is that you can't trust police or law enforcement and you can't trust the media to get the real story. And so these guys are the ones that are going to get the real story. But they don't. I think I was trying to figure out what the documentary was trying to say about these kinds of people. And in the beginning, I think they're perceived as like kind of they might know what they're talking about or what they're doing, or they're what their takeaways might have a point. But by the end of the, or not even by the end, like as soon as like the police work starts being done, you realize these guys don't know what the hell. They have no idea what they're talking about. They're just kind of making it up as they go along. And I feel like they kind of just fall apart. And you realize they're just here to gossip at the end of the day. It's just gossip for the clicks.
Yeah, in this day and age where distrust of media and like government and stuff is rampant, they found the niche, they found the slot where they fit, and that there's an audience for that, and they've run with it. I personally don't think, this is my personal opinion, I don't think they're horrible people. Some of them seem like they genuinely, care about the cases. They're communicating with the families, they're trying to get them closure, they're trying to help in any way they can. And obviously there's other people that are going to take advantage of this and just doing it for money and just to be seen and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. That's a good point. So you're talking about someone named Olivia. Her on TikTok, she's Chronicles of Olivia, and this other person, Bullhorn Betty, and they're kind of on the scene. They'll be reporting from, where the police are, where the press are, where the house where he was killed. I think Betty, or not Betty, but Olivia at one point got really close to one of the families, or the dads of one of the family members. And then you have other people like that blonde Jenna Canella, I think her name was, and this other rando JLR who used to be like an ex-scammer. And they're
that was surprising to learn his past that on the third episode.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of satisfying to learn. I'm like, good. He looks like a scumbag. So you have these two sides. Like this one side who's just like, conspiracy theory, just from their house, from their sofa, right? They don't care. And then you have these other folks who are trying a little bit to be journalists, and they're definitely pretending to be journalists, and they're just on the scene and so there's like two approaches to this. But Scott, to your point, there was that CBS reporter giving it all a little bit of balance and sort of setting a different tone.
Because you said, I guess you were saying, I don't remember what you just said. I think you used the phrase pretending to be journalists. Yeah. But the definition of what a journalist is being modified by the public. Because a journalist would be someone that would be either a writer or a radio announcer who would just, doesn't matter what their personality would not get in the way of telling the story, which is still what broadcast news, some cable news, it doesn't matter what their personal life is, it doesn't get in the way. But with TikTok, both merge, because most people who are on TikTok, this is speaking from someone who doesn't use TikTok, most of the time people are watching people on social media because they get attached to the persona of the person that they're watching, not necessarily because of their background and experience, but you get to have this feeling that they have experience because but there's not really any source checking of what they'll say. I have this, I found out this, but there's people's lives that are affected by what they say. So if they pinpoint the wrong person, it affects someone that they just called out. That's not true, which also led to the police department having to create on a daily basis a whole section of their website to debunk anything that was factually inaccurate. And they had to update it on a daily basis, which, yes, the sleuths helped in a lot of ways, but it also distracted the police department from actually focusing on the case versus having to make sure that PR is accurate to the facts that are actually putting out there, because they were speaking for the police department, and when you have all these people speaking out, it's hard for them to focus on the work that they're trying to accomplish.
All right, name one way the sleuths helped.
Well, they called out the gentleman. I don't remember his name. The gentleman that they're up at trial. They brought attention to him.
Kohlberger?
Yes.
They didn't even know this guy existed. They were thinking, they were like, the reason they created the rumor thing, yes, is you're right, it's because of these idiots over there on the bullhorn just saying anything, but they were pointing at the hoodie guy, because
Right.
they saw some guy in a white hoodie in a taco truck, and they were
Right.
like, that's the killer.
Exactly.
And then they started targeting the neighbor, who had absolutely nothing to do with it, and then when this Kroger guy got arrested, they had no idea. This guy was not even on the radar.
See,
they had no idea what they were talking about.
But there's people that, the police department can't solve cases on their own. That's why they rely on tips.
Of course they can.
No, they rely on
Yes,
tips.
they rely on tips.
They
but
rely
need
on
credible tips.
Right.
They don't rely on bullshit
Right.
and conspiracy.
But that's the challenge of
Like-
having people on TikTok, because they are vocally recording their perspective and tips, and it's going out to the masses.
yeah.
I think one thing to remember is with journalism, the journalist is the background and the story is up front. With these cyber sleuths, it's more of their online personality is front and center.
Yeah, 100%.
And the story is background. And you just see that from some of these videos where it's just like a close-up of someone's face during a selfie, just talking and going crazy and throwing text
With a
up and
map in the
making it
back.
all- making it all
Breaking news
shiny
graphic.
and stuff, and it's like it makes you ask the question, like, what do you guys think do cyber sleuths genuinely care, or are they just over the top characters trying to get exposed?
I think they cared I think they start caring, but then, and I think they care. I think everyone at a certain point in journalism has their own ego that they want to be the first to the story. They want to be the first to it. And I think that's what these cyber sleuths have, that same feeling. But they don't want to be held behind the barricade of having to work for a large media company or a large, network.
Because they can't.
Because,
These people
and they're probably getting paid more than they would at a normal job as a correspondent or something. Right?
well, no, they're not. Because they're only...
No, these guys are
Well,
barely making any
They're
money.
getting tons of people donating to them when they go live. Some of them were even saying that some of the platforms reached out to them to like promote a product or something.
But they're not making...
Yeah.
They're selling T-shirts. This guy JLR has.
Oh, poor
shirts.
JLR. Nah, those guys, they're making bare minimum. Trust me.
Yes.
Those guys are not making a lot of money. And I don't think they want to be journalists, because that requires actual work. Like, they don't want to be a journalist.
This is how, for example, like guys like Alex Jones and all these, alternative news people got started, and that guy went on to become like he was like a millionaire or something.
Yeah, but he started off as an actual like TV or radio personality. Like that guy had real training. And not to say that these guys can't become famous, rich, whatever their heart desires, but they're not journalists. And what they're doing is creating so much noise, and they forget that while they're here talking back and forth to each other and their audience, the police are actually doing the work. So when they get breaking news, what they're doing is following like a real episode of CSI Live. And every scene, when there's a new piece of evidence, they just reacting to that scene and saying, no, I think the real killer is this guy. Like, they're not contributing anything.
They're just keeping content coming.
Yes.
And coming, because that's what they rely on.
And what they said in the documentary, there's not really an advantage to them, sadly, for the case to be solved, because if the case is solved, there's nothing more to talk about.
Exactly. Like when they caught this guy, suddenly half of them are like, nah, he didn't do it.
Yeah, unless they disagree with what the outcome of the case is, then it's like, I still don't think they got it right. This is all the evidence against that.
Yeah, but it's like convincing a flat earther that when you finally convince them that it's not round, they're still not going to believe you, because then it makes everything else so meaningless and insignificant. You're taking away their purpose.
Well, if they have an opinion and they have certain things to back up their opinion, there's no end to this, They'll just it can just be one. It could be one point of view, or it could be the other one. And as long as you keep presenting things to back up your point of view,
it's endless until
you're out there. It's endless, and anyone can agree with you.
People will, because they don't really trust anything.
Yeah. At the end of this, after watching this, I was kind of left thinking, should there be laws against cyber sleuthing? What do you guys think?
I don't think so. I still think people have the right to kind of use their voice and speak to their audience however they want, as long as they're not actively interrupting or intentionally, messing with the case in any way. I think that's fine. It's not a pretty part of society by any means. There are a lot of other dark parts of our society, but I don't see this one as being all that harmful.
Requiring.
I think well, these are all platforms that are expanding without any guidelines, because there are guidelines that any broadcast network has to follow. They have to follow the FCC, and cable somewhat, follows that integrity somewhat as well. But it's up to the company of TikTok to go, all right, we are going to set guidelines and regulations of what content, because they're basically the network. So if they're
but they have regulations, Scott, just like networks, they have regulations on certain things. But the question is, do you think sleuthing should be regulated on TikTok or wherever?
Yes, I think that you should be, at a certain extent, if you're saying something that's factual and you think it's factual, you should provide a source to it. Whether it just like with Wikipedia, you can't put a sentence without, a citation. If there's no.
Well, there was that one individual who's currently being sued by the professor because she claimed that this other person was the killer, and she gave her full name, where she works, her address. So she's suing. So that's why these guys also made it a point to constantly say allegedly this, allegedly that. This is just my opinion, for legal protection.
But if they say allegedly, you still would cite where the alleged statement is from.
Yeah, but it's just gossip. There's no source.
Right, which is why it goes to show how valuable and whether or not this should be something that people should be able to put out there, because it falls into entertainment. They're not. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not informational. It's entertainment.
And this is the issue that we're facing in society right now. And I want to quote the director in an article where she was interviewed, where she said, this is the type of bite-sized information craving society we live in right now, where most people who have grown up on these social media platforms can't tell the difference between entertainment and news.
Yeah.
Or entertainment and reality. So it's just all a blur to them, They can turn on like a legit source or read a newspaper and see someone on TikTok, doing their own deep dive into it, and they're both equal to them. It's both on the same level of content to them.
Right. The information has the same value. And I think one of the sleuths actually said that. They're constantly bashing mainstream media, obviously. But they actually said, why would someone watch, an interview on television when they can just get everything here in 30 seconds, all the information? But you can't. You can't get all the information.
Yeah, there's obviously, there's something wrong with that, but it's sad, that society has come to a point where, like, that's an option now.
Yeah.
There's also, of course, there's dangers and there's pros and cons to it, but one of the things they were trying to sort of hint at, it was this theory that the killer was actually on some of these social media channels, like
Yeah.
putting in his 2 cents and chatting about it and learning how to not get caught, because they're just adapting to what evidence people know, like what's information is out there. So that's a whole nother thing, like if it's an unsolved case and there's someone out there that's responsible for this stuff, they could just be keeping up with what's going on online, and just adapting and learning and staying one step ahead of the police this way.
And it also is, it still makes you still have the issue of the concept of innocent until proven guilty. But when you have people speaking publicly to an audience, saying things about others, saying things allegedly, that's practically making the person guilty before they're even, other than being considered innocent first.
Yeah.
I feel like at some point, if you're gonna have a channel or something where you're investigating stories, these platforms, TikTok or whatever it may be, are gonna have to end up like categorizing these channels. Like if you're actually doing this type of stuff, you need to pass some sort of check from this platform and be labeled under the category like you.
But that's even more difficult because
just as a way to differentiate, like if somebody has that check mark or something, they've passed some sort of like stringent background check for what they're claiming they do, versus someone who doesn't have that check. At least that's some sort of differentiation. Even though it's not going to make a difference. The people that want to watch something are going to watch it, but it should just be categorized, and there should be some sort of process to. You can't just I can't just go make a channel right now about geology or something and like claiming things about rocks that I don't know about.
But
You can.
You can.
But you can. That's what I'm saying. But you can. But there should be a way to you should have to present this channel, and then be approved to be under this.
There are too many channels that are created every single day that it's almost impossible. You would rely on an AI algorithm, because there's probably thousands of channels that are made every day. But to even for news organizations, you'll have CBS News produce 48 Hours, which is pretty much a news entertainment show, which goes through all of the all the stages of a case. It starts out that the person's dead, and it goes through a full hour of going over Dateline.
48 hours,
Yeah.
Dateline, 60 Minutes.
That's all.
Yeah, but that's interesting.
But 60 Minutes is
forensics,
separate. 60 Minutes is separate. That's still factual.
Criminal justice, criminal science, forensics. I think those are interesting topics. You do learn from that. There's an education level to that. I think we're getting away from the point that these people online, they're just making things up. They're just adding fire to the fuel and more confusion to everything. Like Pedro, you brought up, the idea that maybe this guy is online and he's watching everything. Like, that's a conspiracy theory that they just threw out there, just like all the other ones they threw out there. It's baseless. And during the case, the police kept all the information very close to their chest, and people didn't like that because then they left them in the dark and they left them guessing. But
it also
the
keeps
police have not really misfired on this case. There's a couple of mistakes they made early on, but that's because they're walking a thin line of like, how much do we share? How much do we keep close? Do we want to give away this much information? So it's a difficult position that they find themselves in, number one, just to solve the case. But it's unrealistic that they're going to just catch the guy in 2 days and put him on trial. Like, you got to give them the time. And, as much as you don't want to, you got to trust the process because it's out of your hands.
Yeah, it was, in this case, it was just the perfect storm of the audience wanted more, the police and the authorities weren't giving out information, and then the murder itself was just so bizarre, like, how does someone come in, murder these 4 people, their roommate, in such a horrific way that, in a horrific way, but yet the other people in the house didn't notice it. The following day, they were just out and about, like hanging out in front of the house, calling other college students over. These people are dead in a horrific way in the home. They finally called the police like hours later.
Yeah.
So it was just so many question marks off the bat from just knowing the basis of what happened, that it was just the perfect storm. And in a social media led society, it was bound to just explode.
When people want answers right away, these types of crimes need time and caution. It got out of hand.
Because
I want to leave it there.
legal and instant gratification
Scott, I know.
are not
All right.
don't work together. But I think what's really this documentary led to a conversation, and I think it was a very valuable documentary that was created. I'm glad, Pedro, you shared it with us, because it's bringing to light that something that exists that some of us don't know that's out there.
Yeah.
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 Okay. And we'll leave it there. Next week, I'm going to talk about Sopranos. We'll talk about Curb. We wanted to bring that up today, but there was no time. Maybe we'll catch up on True Detective. That should be wrapping up soon. And yeah, one or two surprises. So like, subscribe. We'll see you later. Peace.